Hi, I'm Suskin. We live in such interesting times. Socio-political changes, economic changes, whatever happens next. But we also live in a time of exciting scientific discovery. And one of the discoveries that constantly happens and that we're always interested in, discoveries in space, astronomical discoveries, gravity waves, new distant objects, planets, new understandings about all sorts of astronomical data. And we find planets in distant solar systems and we find objects in our own solar system. Astrologers are continuously asked, what does it mean when a new planet is found or a new object is found? What does it mean? What is the astrological implications? What does it mean for humankind? So to help me examine that from an astrological point of view and understand all the various issues that astrology looks at to try and understand the meaning of these things in our world is my friend and colleague astrologer Gary Cousins. So welcome Gary, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for inviting me.
So firstly, what has been going on in the sky that is getting astronomers so excited?
So the big discovery is mathematically, astronomers from Caltech in California have Mike Brown particularly, who's very famous for discovering a number of exoplanets and infamously for demoting Pluto to a dwarf planet.
He's the guy.
Yeah. So they looked at the orbital of all the planets out in the Kuiper belts, which is really the area beyond the orbits of Pluto. There's a number of objects, Sedna, and including Neptune. So interestingly enough, Neptune in 1846, when it was discovered visually, before it actually been discovered mathematically, they noticed a number of perturbations in the orbit of Uranus, and scientists worked out mathematically that there had to be another body to explain the orbitals of Uranus. So mathematically they worked out where Neptune would be, and then eventually with telescopes they visually confirmed the existence of Neptune.
So is this new discovery, have there been any visual confirmations?
So the new discovery is that in January it was announced that they mathematically have now, or pretty much certain, that there's a ninth planet. So excluding Pluto not being called a planet, the ninth planet, the eighth planet would be Neptune, the ninth planet would be the ninth planet. So mathematically they now believe there's a ninth planet. There's been no visual as yet, so the big race is on right now, and obviously there will be certain fame attached to the first astronomer, or maybe a hobbyist astronomer maybe discovers that the visual sighting confirming the mathematical theory that there's a ninth planet.
I'm sure they'll hate it if it's an amateur that discovers it, but it usually is. But is there general agreement on this discovery, or are there some astronomers that say otherwise?
It's still mathematically a theory, and there will always be, I guess, astronomers who would take a counterpoint view that there isn't enough evidence mathematically. But the compelling argument is that if you look at the elliptical orbits of all of these Kuiper belt bodies, is that they all lie off onto one side, and that gravitationally scientists concluded that there had to be some counterpoint. And what they've discovered mathematically is that there is this counterpoint body. And the interesting thing is why it gets us astrologers excited, it's of planet size. It's, I believe, sort of similar size to Neptune.
I know that because the whole argument when Pluto was demoted was that it just wasn't big enough. So yes. There's no argument here.
There's no argument. This is a real dinkum planet. And I think Mike Brown said in his video that for people upset that Pluto is demoted, now at least there's a real planet that's going to be discovered.
But haven't people always been talking about, like astrologers, been talking about, oh yes, there will be another planet discovered. There are not enough planets and they're mysterious objects, and I've heard of this thing called Nibiru. Is it that?
It's definitely not Nibiru. Nibiru is probably a cultural meme that was put in through the writings of Zachariah Stitchin in his series called The Earth Chronicles, the first book being called The 12th Planet. Mm-hmm. So there, in that book, Pluto is seen as the 11th, and he spoke of a 12th planet, and he claimed that the Sumerian text that he was translated spoke of this planet. And in his book, The 12th Planet, he speaks of a planetary body with an orbital rotation of about 3,600 years, whereas this body, this planet 9, it's somewhere between 15 and 20,000 years.
Just when I was thinking 3,600 was a lot of years.
Yes. So from an astrology perspective, a planetary body with a orbital rotation period of 20,000 years is actually of no use to us astrologers.
I mean, it does raise the issue that the whole Pluto issue is of what defines a planet. So what I always thought about the Pluto issue when they argued about its size and its shape and where it's found in the solar system, astrology originally had the idea that planets are planets because they're visible. I mean, that's how they saw them in the first place. The later discoveries of Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, they are not visible planets. You're talking about the Kuiper belt, which is this belt of objects around the solar system. Will we ever see it? Are there any visibility of those things?
So other bodies like Sedna have been visually seen through telescopes.
Yes.
But again, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, and other bodies like Sedna and Eris have been visually seen through telescopes.
But then you say, so an object with a 20,000-year orbit has little direct value to astrologers, obviously. I mean, it's so much bigger than a lifespan or a culture span. But then what does it mean to astrologers when this is found?
So I think what it means to astrologers is that if we look back to the discoveries of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, we've looked back and seen that there's been a correlation to global events. So Uranus was discovered in 1781, and that we look back in history and see it was the time of the French Revolution, the Industrial Revolution,
American Revolution.
So there was a revolutionary kind of zeitgeist at that time in the world. And Uranus in astrology has come to mean revolutionary, going against the sort of flow of things, doing things differently. And interesting enough, Uranus in itself rotates in the opposite directions to other planets. It's aligned off the rotational point 90 degrees. So it as a planet is everything opposite.
It does things differently.
Yes, it does things differently. And then in 1846, when Neptune was discovered, Neptune is associated with sort of spiritualism, psychic phenomena, altered states of consciousness, drugs. And at that time, in the late 1800s, the whole sort of Freud psychotherapy movement and really going into the unconscious, and there was a rise of spiritualism.
And the discovery of the invention of film.
So Neptune is associated with film. So there was that correlation. And then Pluto, in the 1930s, gave rise to fascism and the discovery or the invention of the atomic bomb, which comes from plutonium. So we look back and we see those planets have some correlation with their sort of astrological meanings and sort of shifts in cultural events on planet Earth.
So we use those planets in astrology to predict changes and shifts at individual levels. And we're taught that they're generational planets. They're the ones that connect us to social forces. So would we expect the same with this?
So my speculation with Planet 9 is that it's exciting because it's a planet. It's certainly exciting to astronomers, and I believe exciting to astrologers, is that here is a planet that's of a significant size that's going to be discovered. And the 20,000 year period speaks of, so if we go back, discovery of a planet, the sort of theories looking back at those three bodies, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, is that they correlate with some shift in human activity, consciousness, sort of a cultural zeitgeist. So perhaps this planet too is going to mark some shift in human consciousness.
That's an interesting idea, because I wonder what we mean by consciousness. The thing that I always worry about with astrology in particular, because I'm an astrologer, but with other things as well, but that it kind of sounds elitist almost to say that, oh, that there's some people who are evolving in consciousness. Because when you look at the world as a whole, there's still pain, suffering, war, despair, in all directions like there always was. And so are we talking about a shift of consciousness, or are we talking about a shift in social and political things like that, activities?
I think the 20,000 years is a clue that, for me, it would be a shift in consciousness. So if we look back at evolutionary history, evolution is not a linear process. There is a point where suddenly, there's a shift in an evolutionary stage. And my hope for humanity is that, boy, we need a shift in human consciousness, because the way we're carrying on, in many ways, is no different than we've been carrying on for thousands of years.
Well, that's why I say, does human consciousness ever shift? Because when we look at history, it doesn't look like we've changed that much.
There was a shift. I mean, archaeologists and paleontologists will go back 35,000 years. Right. There was a shift. Suddenly there was a birth of language, there was a birth of art that didn't exist beforehand. So something happened 35,000 years
ago.
ago.
That's really interesting, because that's the scale that we're talking about. So that I didn't realize.
So that scale to me is a clue that this isn't just a cultural marker. This has to be a evolutionary shift.
That's really interesting. So then I have to ask you, the kind of quasi-fascism that's beginning to rise in the world, and Donald Trump, is this to do with Planet 9, or Planet 9 saves the day?
No, I don't think it's to do with Planet 9. I think what you're seeing in this rise of fascism is a correlation in the positioning of Uranus and Pluto. So basically in the 1930s, with the rise of fascism, we had Uranus and Pluto in a square configuration. And again, now we have those planets in a square configuration. And that the last time they were in that exact configuration was in the 1930s. Right. So that's the correlation that I see from an astrological perspective. But I just think that this Planet 9, with such a, when it finally is sighted, and astrologers will go back and will immediately look to see in what zodiacal sign that this Planet 9 came into our consciousness. And that'll give us some clues. That's what we always do. We first look at the first sighting of a planet, or the first sighting, for example, Bernadette Brady in her book on eclipses will look at the birth of an eclipse series and what the zodiacal star chart of that eclipse series birth is, and make future predictions as to the meaning. So similarly, I would say that when we finally sight through a telescope this Planet 9 and it's confirmed in that position, we will say, okay, well, what star sign, what zodiac sign is it in? And then we'll make some kind of understanding interpretations from that.
But then, given that it's going to take 20,000 years to track around, the kind of evolution of consciousness that we're talking about, we're talking at evolutionary scale. We're not talking about historical scale. It's not as if we are more evolved than our parents and our children are going to live in this amazing world where everyone's evolved.
No, so it has to be it's got to be a shift. And again, I think evolution will again happen over generations.
Right.
That if there's a shift in consciousness, children will be born with maybe new genetics or new consciousness ways of being, and we'll only look back in time to say there was a evolutionary shift.
Right. So we're talking about our distant descendants who are going to be evolving those things. So then, where would it leave someone today who's thinking about trying to advance ourselves, trying to evolve ourselves, and look to astrology. I mean, is there any kind of inspiration that someone could take today, knowing that this is happening, that gives them hope for humanity?
So I would say yes, because I think the hope is that this planet 9 would signify an evolutionary shift. And knowing that humanity can evolve to a higher level of being, and we can hopefully shift out of this selfish, destructive level of being that we've really been doing for thousands of years.
That's such an important point. And I think also, I mean, as you say that, it occurs to me that maybe that part of the lesson is learning about unselfishness, is that although we will never live to see that shift, and our children will never live to see that shift, if we care about humanity more than ourselves, and we don't care that it might take thousands of years for it to shift, then it's still worth investing our energy in it.
I think the key point is to have this long viewpoint, because so much of our capitalist system and our economic systems is so focused on the next quarterly results, and we've got to get the money in by the half year and the quarterly results. Whereas there's actually a foundation in America called the Long Now Foundation. In Colorado, they have a bell that they ring once every 1,000 years. And so, it's like saying humanity needs to have a longer view of our existence. Because right now, the way we're carrying on and the way our capitalist system is going is that we're exploiting everything and destroying everything, and there'll be nothing left. And hence we have this kind of viewpoint of, let's start a third world war, let's get rid of half the world's population because there's nothing, there won't be enough. But if we adopt this long now viewpoint, that there's a longer plan for humanity, then I think the planet 9 is a beacon of hope, which says that if we go back to, ultimately astrology is all about the planets, and that the planets signify these points of meaning. And if there's a planet out there that's as significantly of size as Neptune, it has some meaning. But that meaning is for the human race as a collective, and not so much as for an individual. And what does it mean in my chart?
That's amazing. So get beyond ourselves, getting beyond our little fake country borders, and thinking of the future of our species and our planet. That's a very powerful lesson.
So I think the planet will signify a wake-up call for humanity to say, think in cycles of long 20,000 years. I mean, I can only hope that this planet is, if we sight it visually, that it's close enough.
I hope that we're still here in 20,000 years.
We need to.
That's amazing. So that's really interesting. So then I have to ask you this: any suggestions for names? I mean, we can't call it Planet 9. Someone's going to have to name this thing.
That's the interesting thing. Is it going to be named in a similar sense to some mythological? There seems to be a tradition.
Yes.
And I know that Uranus originally was going to be called Herschel.
The dude who discovered it, yeah.
And then it got called Uranus, and it correlates with Greek mythology, because our whole astrology is based upon planetary names linked to mythological. The Sedna is I think a Hawaiian goddess.
Yeah.
So
it is. I mean, I do get concerned that the planet gets named and then astrologers then give it meanings because of that name.
So that maybe concerns me. So what Planet 9 might be called is a speculation, but hopefully they're not going to call it Pokemon or something silly like that.
Maybe they'll just call it Us, and that'll be a good start.
That might be a good start, yeah.
Gary, it's been great having you here. I'm so pleased we were able to do that. Great. I really appreciate your coming.
We look forward to the visual sighting of Planet 9.
We'll be there.
Yes, we'll be there.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks. Sure.
Well, not everything is about us. Even astrology, that very personal art and science that looks at ourselves and our karma in such detail, sometimes is trying to locate us in the bigger picture. And I think that's a great lesson is that there is a bigger picture, as important as our own stuff always is. So, on the subject of that, let's have a look at your questions. And the question this week is from Leanne. Leanne, you say that you are in a business partnership, you're starting a new business, and you are being sued by another business over supposed copyright trademark infringement. And you have already won the first court case, but there has been an appeal, and you want to know what's going on. Well, looking at your chart, I do agree that your opponent is big and powerful, and they will use their power as much as they can. However, looking at the expected outcome, it does continue to look like things are in your favor. In terms of a court match, it is kind of pretty evenly matched. I don't know what your situation is with regards to the lawyer, but from the chart's point of view, the tipping point that makes it in your favor is your lawyer. So hopefully, it's like saying, I hope you're willing to spend money on the lawyer, because your chart says you've got a lawyer who will really help you with this and help you get it right. It will seem like a touch and go situation, and I must alert you that the opponent, the others, have some kind of either trick up their sleeve, or they're going to introduce something new or something like that. It's not shown as a major worry, but it's really just saying things won't go exactly as expected because of they're preparing in a different way. But the end result is it leans to your favor. The bottom line of your question is, should we give up now? Is it worth persisting with this? And from the balance of things in the chart, as close as it is, it does look like it is still worth going forward at this time. In an ideal situation with a chart like this, I would recommend some kind of out-of-court settlement or out-of-court negotiation, because the chart does imply that both sides are strong, both sides are kind of evenly matched, meaning you've both got good arguments or you've both got good lawyers. But in the final analysis, things keep on falling in your favor, and it looks like you can clinch it your way. It will be expensive to do so. It's possible that means a little bit more expensive than you're expecting. But prepare accordingly, make some kind of proper arrangement with your lawyer so you're prepared for whatever expenses happen. But bottom line is, I think you do need to persist. It's worth pushing this through to the end. So thanks for your question, Leanne. And remember, everyone, if you have a question about something that's busy happening in your life as we speak, and you need to understand something about the outcome or know what's going to happen, drop me a line at this address as usual. You can also visit my website, where you'll be able to fill out a form with all the right details to ask me a question. And you can also contact me from that website for other things. You might be interested in studying astrology or having a private appointment. Visit me there. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Meanwhile, of course, I will be back next Friday as usual on YouTube at 12 noon South African time. Don't miss it, and share it with your friends.